Xeno decides to walk from his house to the park. In order to get to the park, he first has to get halfway to the park. This portion of his journey takes some finite amount of time. Once he gets to the halfway point, he needs to walk half the remaining distance. Again, this takes a finite amount of time. Once he gets there, he still needs to walk half the distance that's left, which takes another finite amount of time. This happens again and again and again. You can see that we can keep going like this forever, dividing whatever distance is left into smaller and smaller pieces, each of which takes some finite time to traverse. So, how long does it take Xeno to get to the park? Well, to find out, we need to add the times of each of the pieces of the journey. The problem is, there are infinitely many of these finite-sized pieces. So, shouldn't the total time be infinity?
This was definitely going to stay a step ahead. And I came up with a phrase called the precognitive sentient phenomena. And the point there was that we were studying certain things, but there was I hate to call it, I don't know how to describe it, a supernumerary that was definitely in charge. And it seemed to know how we would respond to phenomena before the observation took place. It was certainly sentient, it was certainly smarter than us, and phenomenological.
Just think of a cigarette or a cigar. That parts of the cigar that have already burnt, or the cigarette that have already burnt, the ash, is the past. That part of the cigarette or cigar that has not yet burned is the future. And the cherry, that moment of ignition, that spark of where the future is now getting consumed and becoming the past, that is the present. And we as human beings, we live at that moment. All of our hopes, our fears, our memories, love, hate, good, bad, all that is an expression of an experience that occurs at an infinitesimally small moment of space-time. That is how we experience the present. But what if there were things that had the ability to experience where the present was a much bigger cherry, if you will, a much bigger transition, where more elements of the future and the past are experienced as in the present? And can do that also physically, right? So it's not just an idea, but what if there were species out there that experience the universe with an extra level of dimension? And so you and I are having this conversation right now with your audience, and we're having this conversation right here, right now. But if I were to have the ability to have this conversation right here, but 5 minutes ago or 5 minutes from now, we would never meet. We'd be like two ships passing in the night. Is it possible that maybe some of these things, these UAP, have the ability, we experience them, we experience them when they are right here, right now, and every other time we don't, because we're simply not intersecting with that extra dimensional space of time.
We need to keep exploring and experimenting until we find the answers. The electromagnetic spectrum is going crazy. We got something, we got something!
Terry quickly fired a shot at the wolf's abdomen, which rang out across the empty pasture, but it had no effect. The huge animal did not react in any way. It did not stagger or yelp. It did not even flinch. It simply continued to ravage the poor calf. In his desperation, Terry fired again. Still, the gun had no effect. After a third shot, however, the wolf slowly released its grip and backed off about 10 feet. The rancher could not believe his eyes. Very few animals could have survived 3 shots from a .357 Magnum at point-blank range, but this wolf was somehow not even wounded. There was no blood anywhere on its coat. Finally, he took a 4th shot, right at the animal's heart, and it retreated another 30 feet. There was something incredibly unnerving about the way it just stood there with an unconcerned look, contemplating whether to attack the calf a second time. Terry sensed this and shouted at his son to get his .30-06 rifle from the house, which he did within a matter of seconds. The wolf remained perfectly still as he took aim with the heavier firearm, and he almost felt sorry for the poor beast. A deafening shot echoed across the wilderness as he pulled the trigger, and in that moment he knew he'd hit his target. But instead of collapsing to the ground in a heap as it should have done, the wolf simply withdrew another 2 yards and stood looking at an increasingly unsettled Terry. He quickly took another shot, and this time he saw a chunk of flesh detached from the animal, but even this did not put it down. The wolf took a last unhurried look at the calf, then turned and trotted back in the direction it came from.